The Galactic Council had seen many mysteries in its 12,000-year history, but none quite like the disappearance of Lyra Hales. Commander Vexther of the Cretani Enforcement Fleet stood before the viewing screen, his 4 eyes narrowing as he reviewed the footage for the 100th time. The human research vessel Meridian's Hope floated silently in the debris field of what had once been a thriving colony world. The ship was intact, life support was functional. But Lyra Hales, the sole human aboard, was simply gone. "Run the scan again," Vexther commanded, his translator clicking with frustration. His second officer, a methodical Quellan named Arispa, manipulated the holographic controls with her tentacles. "Sir, we've scanned 17 times. There are no life signs aboard except the cubs." "Yes, I know." Vexther's mandibles clicked irritably. "Which makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. The cubs in question were Velkari apex predators from a death world 3 systems away. Full-grown Velkari stood 8 feet tall, possessed jaws that could crush durasteel, and had never, in recorded history, been domesticated. Their young were only marginally less dangerous, born with full sets of razor teeth and an instinctual aggression that made them unsuitable for any environment containing other life forms. Yet 3 Velkari cubs were aboard that ship, curled together in the humans' quarters, fast asleep. "Prepare a boarding team," Vexther ordered. "Full combat gear. If those cubs wake up, sir," Arispa's voice held an unusual tremor. "You should see this." The holographic display shifted, zooming into the humans' quarters. The image was grainy but unmistakable. One of the cubs, the smallest, with distinctive auburn fur markings, had lifted its head. Its eyes were open, staring directly at the camera with an intelligence that sent chills down Vexther's dorsal ridge. Then it did something that made every species in the control room freeze. It smiled, not the aggressive baring of teeth that preceded an attack. A genuine, drowsy smile, the kind a satisfied youngling might give before drifting back to sleep. The cub yawned, revealing rows of serrated teeth, then gently nuzzled against its siblings and closed its eyes once more. That's not possible," whispered Arispa. "Velkari don't have the facial musculature for—" "I know what Velkari can and cannot do," Vexther snapped, but his confidence was shaken. In all his years of service, he'd never seen a predator species display such contentment. The boarding party moved through the Meridian's Hope with weapons drawn, but the ship felt more like a home than a crime scene. There were signs of life everywhere: a half-finished meal in the galley, a datapad displaying research notes on xenobiology, and dozens of handwritten notes stuck to various surfaces with small, colorful squares of adhesive. Lieutenant Kress, a heavily armored Thunian, was the first to reach the quarters. His report came through immediately. "Commander, you need to see this." When Vexther entered the room, he understood why his lieutenant's voice had carried such awe. The 3 cubs weren't just sleeping. They were arranged carefully positioned on a nest of blankets and pillows that had clearly been prepared for them. Nearby sat 3 bowls, empty but still bearing traces of a specialized nutrient paste. A water dispenser had been modified to accommodate their unique physiology. And scattered around the room were toys, crude things fashioned from spare parts and fabric, but toys nonetheless. One cub, the one later identified as Wren from the auburn markings, opened one eye as the boarding party entered. Every weapon in the room instantly trained on the small predator. Wren yawned again, utterly unconcerned by the dozen armed soldiers surrounding him, and made a sound that the translator struggled to interpret. After a moment, it offered, "Tired. Safe here." She promised. It spoke? Kress's weapon wavered. "Velkari cubs don't develop language for another 3 cycles," Arispa said over the comm. "This is impossible." Vexther lowered his weapon slowly, approaching the nest. Wren watched him with those intelligent, knowing eyes. "Where is Lyra Hales?" the commander asked. Wren's ears drooped. The other 2 cubs stirred, pressing closer to him. "She heard the call, the old call. The one that means danger to younglings." The cub's words came in fragments, as if language was still new and difficult. She said, "Stay, dream, be safe. We stayed. We dreamed. We are safe. What call? What danger?" But Wren was already drifting back to sleep, his small form rising and falling with each breath. Before his eyes closed completely, he murmured, "She went to the screaming place, where the bad things from stars hurt the small ones. She said humans don't leave babies behind." Any babies? Vexther felt something cold settle in his core. He accessed the ship's long-range sensors, pulling up data from the surrounding sectors. There, barely at the edge of detection range, was a distress beacon from a Valkyrie colony transport. The timeline clicked into place with horrible clarity. The transport had been attacked 3 days ago by raiders. It carried civilians, families. The distress call would have been barely audible at this distance, but Lyra Hales had apparently heard it, and she had responded. She left the cubs here in safety and went after the others, Irispa said softly. Alone, in a research vessel with no weapons. The next 20 hours were a blur of faster-than-light jumps and emergency mobilization. When the Council fleet arrived at the transport's last coordinates, they found the raider vessel drifting, its hull breached in a dozen places. The Valkyrie transport was intact, its population traumatized but alive. And in the raider ship's command deck, surrounded by unconscious pirates and jerry-rigged explosive devices, they found Lyra Hales. She was bruised, exhausted, and had clearly improvised every weapon she'd used from whatever materials were at hand. But she was alive. When they brought her back to the Meridian's Hope, Ren was waiting. The cub launched himself at her the moment the airlock opened, all 3 younglings tumbling over each other in their eagerness to reach her. She collapsed under their weight, laughing and crying simultaneously, as the vicious predators licked her face and purred like oversized house cats. You came back, Ren managed, his grasp of language suddenly much clearer. You promised and you came back. Of course I came back, Lyra said, holding all 3 cubs close. I told you I would. Humans don't break promises to children. Not ever. Vexthur watched from the doorway, trying to reconcile everything he thought he knew about humans, about Valkyrie, about the fundamental nature of the galaxy itself. Here was a species, humanity, that had been spacefaring for barely 2 centuries. Yet somehow this one woman had bonded with creatures that had terrified the Council for millennia. Had risked everything for strangers. Had kept her promise to 3 orphan cubs. We still don't understand, he said quietly. How did you bond with them? How did you teach them? Lyra looked up at him, her eyes red but fierce. I didn't do anything special, Commander. I just treated them like what they are, scared kids who needed someone to care. Turns out, that's a pretty universal language. Ren nuzzled against her, and for the first time in recorded history, a Valkyrie purred loud enough for the ship's sensors to register it as a seismic event. The report Vexthur filed that day would be studied by xenopsychologists for generations. But the commander himself never forgot this simple truth he'd witnessed. Sometimes the most dangerous thing in the galaxy isn't teeth or claws or weapons. It's a human who's decided your family,